I'll never forget the moment my entire world came crashing down. It was a frigid Tuesday morning in Toledo, Ohio, when my boss, Dr. James Thornton, cut through the silence of the conference room with his icy voice. "Ethan Carter, your negligence cost us $8.4 million. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, burning holes into my skin. I sat there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. 15 years of dedication to Novamed Research Institute. 15 years of ensuring every protocol was followed, every number double-checked. And now I was being made the scapegoat." Thornton, with a cold smirk, announced my termination in front of the entire staff. I said nothing, just stood up, smoothed out my navy blazer, the same one I wore on my first day at Novamed, and walked out. But in my mind a plan was already forming. They thought they could bury me, that I'd slink away quietly like a defeated man. They didn't know I'd documented everything. Every violation, every lie, every shady move by Thornton and his new research team. The next day, I'd be back, not to beg, but to make them pay. Novamed would soon learn that calling me negligent was the biggest mistake they ever made. And when the truth came out, Thornton wouldn't have a leg to stand on in this industry. My name is Ethan Carter, 54 years old, a scientist who spent my entire career safeguarding the integrity of research. Novamed Research Institute, tucked away in the suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, was my second home. 15 years ago, I started here as a lab manager when Novamed was still a small independent research facility, focused on autoimmune disorders. Back then, we worked with pure passion. Every small breakthrough, even a minor step forward in our studies, was celebrated with coffee and donuts from Bob's Diner down the road. Dr. Margaret Ellis, Novamed's founder, always reminded us, "Good science takes time. Patience breeds precision." Her words became my guiding principle. I wasn't the type to chase fame. While other researchers scrambled to publish in big journals, I focused on keeping everything by the book, from chemical storage to data verification. I trained dozens of young scientists, including Lucas Hayes, a lab tech I took a liking to. My work wasn't glamorous, but I took pride in being the one who kept Novamed's reputation spotless in the scientific community. Every evening, as I left the office and looked out at the snow-covered parking lot in Toledo, I felt content with what I'd accomplished. But things started to shift about 5 years ago, when Dr. Ellis retired. The new leadership, with their eyes on grants and patents, slowly replaced our passion for science with a hunger for profit. I tried to adapt, but deep down, I felt a growing unease. The real change hit when Meditech Solutions, a pharmaceutical giant, acquired Novamed 6 months ago. They brought new rules: produce results faster, quality be damned. Dr. James Thornton, the new director handpicked by Meditech, embodied this culture. With his expensive suits and fake smile, he set impossible deadlines and dismissed the protocols I'd spent years building. "Ethan, we need to adapt to the modern era," Thornton once said, his tone implying I was some kind of dinosaur. At the same time, Meditech brought in a new research team, led by Dr. Sarah Blake, a young ambitious scientist. Sarah had talent, but I soon noticed she was willing to cut corners to get results. Chemical logs started showing discrepancies, and trial data had numbers that looked too perfect. When I raised questions, Thornton brushed me off. "Sarah has special approval. She's the future of Novamed." I felt like I was losing control. The standards I'd upheld were now seen as obstacles. I started documenting everything in a small black notebook, what I called my professional insurance. Every time I spotted a violation, from improper chemical storage to tampered data, I jotted it down: dates, times, details. I didn't know when I'd need it, but my gut told me to be ready. That fateful day came on a November morning, when light snow dusted the windows of the conference room. I walked into Novamed's routine staff meeting, unaware it would turn into a public execution. The room was stark, with white walls and a polished wooden table, filled with 20 of my colleagues. Dr. James Thornton stood at the head of the table, his eyes cold and fixed on me. "Ethan Carter," he began, his voice booming like a judge delivering a verdict. "Your negligence has cost the National Institutes of Health Grant Committee $8.4 million. This is unacceptable." The room fell dead silent. I felt the stares of everyone, from Lucas Hayes to Meditech's new researchers, pouring into me. My heart raced, but I couldn't speak. Thornton's accusation hit like a knife. He went on, his tone dripping with theatrics. "Due to these compliance failures, Ethan Carter is no longer with Novamed. His office will be cleared by the end of the day." I wanted to fight back, to shout that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I was the one who always double-checked everything. But I knew this wasn't about truth. Thornton needed a fall guy, and I was the easiest target. I stood up, smoothed my navy blazer, the same one I wore on my first day at Novamed, now a reminder of what I'd lost. As I walked out, whispers erupted behind me. Sarah Blake, standing near the lab, glanced at me and quickly looked away, her cheeks flushing. That look confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks. She was involved in the violations, and Thornton was covering for her. In my office, I began packing up. Photos of old research teams, an award for excellence in lab management, and a handwritten note from Dr. Margaret Ellis, thanking me for my unwavering dedication to truth, all went into a cardboard box. Lucas Hayes appeared at the door, his face etched with worry. "Ethan, need any help?" he asked. "Thanks, Lucas," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm almost done. Just make sure you keep detailed records of everything, especially the chemical logs." Lucas nodded, his eyes flickering with suspicion. "Is that what this is about? The chemical logs?" he asked quietly. "Among other things," I said carefully. "Protect yourself, Lucas. Do what I taught you." After Lucas left, I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out the black notebook. Inside were dozens of pages of notes, dates, times, and suspicious changes in Sarah Blake's data. I slipped it into my bag, took one last look around the office, the aloe plant on the windowsill, the periodic table with my handwritten notes, the view of the parking lot, where I'd watched seasons change. I turned off the light and whispered goodbye to the place that had shaped who I was. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table in my small Toledo, Ohio apartment, the dim light from an old desk lamp casting shadows on the pages of my black notebook. The anger from the meeting still simmered inside me, but now it had given way to a razor-sharp focus. I knew I wasn't wrong. 15 years at Novamed Research Institute, and I'd never overlooked a single detail. If Dr. James Thornton thought I'd slink away quietly, he was dead wrong. I opened the notebook, flipping through pages filled with neat black ink. Each entry was a piece of the truth I'd quietly collected over the past 6 months, ever since Meditech Solutions acquired Novamed. On June 14th, I noted an instance where Dr. Sarah Blake requested the use of hazardous chemicals outside regulated hours, yet the official log showed no activity. On August 2nd, I spotted trial data from Sarah with numbers that were too perfect, patient improvement rates nearly identical, statistically improbable. I'd reported these anomalies to Thornton, but he brushed me off. "Ethan, focus on your management duties. Sarah knows what she's doing." What really caught my attention was the system access log. 3 times in the past month, my credentials were used to approve changes to compliance documents. During hours I wasn't even in the lab. Someone had used my authority to cover up violations, and I had a gut feeling Sarah Blake was behind it, with Thornton's backing. I pulled out my laptop, opened saved emails, and started cross-referencing. An email from Sarah to Thornton in July mentioned minor adjustments to trial data to meet Meditech's expectations. Thornton's reply was curt, "Good. Keep going." That was my first solid piece of evidence, but I needed more. I stood up, brewed a cup of strong black coffee, the kind I used to drink during late nights at Novamed, and returned to the table. My eyes drifted to a framed photo on the shelf, a picture of me with the old research team, back when Dr. Margaret Ellis ran Novamed. Back then, we did science for the sake of truth, not profit. Now I had to use my meticulous nature to take down those who'd betrayed me. As I flipped through the notebook, an old memory surfaced, stopping me cold. 7 years ago, when Novamed was still a small outfit, I caught a researcher named Greg Harris, fudging data to speed up a journal publication. I noticed his report numbers didn't match the experiment logs, but when I raised it with my superiors, I was told to not make a big deal out of it. Greg got a slap on the wrist and left Novamed soon after. I chose silence, thinking keeping the peace was better. But the cost of that silence was a lingering guilt that haunted me for years. I swore I'd never let it happen again. This time, it was different. Thornton and Sarah weren't just cutting corners. They'd framed me as the fall guy to cover their fraud. The incident with Greg was a costly lesson. If I didn't act, the truth would stay buried, and people like Thornton would keep gaming the system. The black notebook in my hands wasn't just a tool anymore. It was a weapon to right past wrongs. I'd passed up a chance to stand up for the truth once, but not this time. I was going all in. I looked out the window, where the faint glow of streetlights lit up Toledo's quiet streets. A cold breeze rattled the frame. I wondered if Margaret Ellis, who taught me the value of patience and precision, would be proud of my resolve. I wasn't seeking revenge for my ego. I wanted the truth exposed, so Novamed, or what was left of it, could get back on the right path. The next morning, I woke up early, filled with determination. Before sending any reports, I needed more information to solidify my evidence. My notebook had plenty of details, but I wanted confirmation from someone on the inside. I thought of Lucas Hayes, the lab tech I'd trained 3 years ago. Lucas was honest, followed protocols to the letter, and I trusted he wouldn't turn his back on me. I texted Lucas, "Can you meet me at Bob's Diner at 9? Need to talk." He replied almost instantly, "Sure, Ethan, I'll be there." Bob's Diner, a few miles from Novamed, was where Lucas and I used to grab lunch during hectic workdays. It was a classic American joint, with red vinyl booths, and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. When I arrived, Lucas was already in a quiet corner, clutching a coffee mug. He looked nervous, his eyes darting to the door. "Ethan," he said softly, as I sat down, the lab's buzzing. "They say you got fired for compliance errors. But I don't buy it." "Thanks, Lucas," I said, keeping my voice low. "I need your help. Have you noticed anything off with Sarah Blake's chemical logs or data?" Lucas hesitated, staring into his coffee. "Yeah," he finally said. "A few weeks ago, I saw Sarah staying late to edit the chemical logs. She said it was a typo, but it felt weird. She even asked me how to wipe edit histories from the system." My pulse quickened. "Did you keep any copies of those logs?" I asked. Lucas nodded. "I've got a habit of backing everything up on a USB, like you taught me. I'll send them to you." He paused, then asked, "What are you gonna do, Ethan? This is big." "I'm doing the right thing," I said, locking eyes with him. "But I need you to stay quiet. Don't let Sarah or Thornton know you talked to me." Lucas nodded, his eyes showing trust. "Got it. You've always kept your word, Ethan." Back home, I opened Lucas's email. It contained copies of the chemical logs, clearly showing unauthorized edits, made under my access code. I cross-checked them with my notebook, and saw a pattern, every change tied to Sarah's trial for a new arthritis treatment, pushed by Meditech for quick results. The evidence was now strong enough to make Thornton and Sarah undeniable. I sat back, taking a deep breath. The next step was organizing everything. My notebook, emails, logs, into an airtight report. But first I had to make sure I was ready for the fallout. Thornton wasn't going down easily, and Meditech had the resources to bury a scandal. But I'd come too far to back down. The truth was all that matters, and I'd make sure it saw the light of day. The night in Toledo, Ohio seemed to stretch on forever. I sat at my laptop in my small apartment, the screen's glow casting light on my face, where a mix of emotions, anger, resolve, and a flicker of anxiety, battled within me. My black notebook lay open beside me, next to stacks of printed emails and chemical logs from Lucas Hayes. Everything I needed to expose Dr. James Thornton and Dr. Sarah Blake was right here. But I knew sending these reports wasn't just an act of justice. It would change everything, not just for Novamed, but for me. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, and began drafting 2 separate documents. The first was a letter to Novamed's ethics board, detailing the falsified data in Sarah Blake's trials and Thornton's complicity. I listed every violation, the 2 perfect numbers in her reports, the unauthorized edits to chemical logs, and the use of my access code to cover up misconduct. Each accusation was backed by evidence, dates, times, emails, and log copies. The second letter went to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, focusing on safety violations in chemical storage, complete with time-stamped screenshots from Novamed's system. Every word I wrote carried a sense of release. This wasn't about personal revenge, it was about protecting the truth I'd dedicated my career to upholding. I reviewed both documents, ensuring no mistakes. Meticulousness had always been my strength, and now it would be my greatest weapon. The clock read midnight. I saved the files, attached them to emails, but held off on hitting send. I needed a short nap to keep my mind sharp for tomorrow, the day everything would erupt. I stood up, looked out the window, where faint streetlights illuminated Toledo's quiet streets. A cold November breeze rattled the frame. I wondered if Dr. Margaret Ellis, who taught me the value of patience and precision, would be proud of this choice. I wasn't seeking fame or recognition. I just wanted the truth exposed, so Novamed, or what was left of it, could get back on track. Morning came, pale dawn light filtering through the blinds. I brewed a cup of strong black coffee, the kind I drank during late nights at Novamed, and put on my navy blazer, the symbol of my first day at Novamed, and now the last day I'd fight for truth here. I opened my laptop, checked the emails one last time, then took a deep breath. My finger hovered over the send button, first to the ethics board, then to OSHA. When the sent notifications popped up, I felt a massive weight lift from my shoulder. Whatever happened next, the truth was out. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. 15 years of dedication, 15 years of safeguarding integrity, and now it all rested on those 2 emails. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Novamed. I let it ring, unanswered. Then another call, this time from Thornton's personal number. I silenced it, not needing to hear his excuses or threats. The evidence would speak for me. I slipped on my coat, tucking a sealed envelope, containing printed copies of everything I'd emailed into my pocket. It was time to return to Novamed, one last time. I drove through Toledo's foggy streets, feeling like a soldier heading into battle, not with weapons or violence, but with the truth, stronger than anything Thornton or Meditech could throw at me. When I walked into Novamed's building, Lisa Morgan, the receptionist, flinched at the sight of me. "Ethan," she stammered. I mean they said you were." I gave her a calm smile, cutting through her confusion. "I'm just dropping something off, Lisa. Please make sure this envelope gets to the board of directors. It's important." Lisa nodded, still flustered, and took the envelope. I could feel her curious stare, but I didn't explain. The truth in that envelope would speak for itself soon enough. As I turned to leave, I heard hurried footsteps from the hallway. Sarah Blake was rushing toward me, her face taut with strain, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept. "Ethan, wait," she called, her voice low and urgent. I paused, letting her catch up, but said nothing. Sarah stood before me, breathing heavily, her eyes almost frantic. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing toward Thornton's office as if afraid someone was watching. "Somewhere private." I looked her dead in the eyes, my voice even but sharp. "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Dr. Blake." Sarah grabbed my sleeve, her voice trembling. "Please, Ethan, what happened yesterday? It wasn't right." I tried to speak up, but I cut her off, not letting her finish. "But you chose silence. Just like you chose to falsify the chemical logs. Just like you used my access code to approve documents I never saw." Sarah's face went pale, her lips moving, but no words coming out. She knew she'd been caught. "How did you?" she whispered, then stopped, realizing her mistake. 15 years, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, but carrying an undeniable weight. 15 years working with every system, every protocol, every audit trail in this lab. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Sarah's shoulders slumped, her voice barely audible. "It was Thornton," she murmured, her eyes darting around to ensure no one overheard. "Newerkad auditry sheesh. Listadatry sheesh. Listadatry. Listadatry. Linoas." He said we needed those results fast-tracked for Meditech's quarterly report. He said you were being difficult, slowing everything down with unnecessary checks. I shook my head, unmoved. Those unnecessary checks keep our research valid, and our lab safe. But that doesn't matter now. The truth is already on its way to those who need to see it. Sarah looked up, her face drained of color. "What have you done?" she asked, her voice near despair. I met her gaze, my answer simple. "My job. The one I've always done, whether anyone appreciated it or not." I turned and walked toward the exit. Sarah called after me, her voice breaking. "Ethan, please give me a chance to explain." But I didn't look back. She and Thornton had dug their own graves, and now they'd face the consequences. As I stepped out of Novamed, the November morning chill in Toledo enveloped me. The sky was overcast, but inside, a clear, powerful feeling rose within me. I'd done the right thing, not out of anger, not to tear anyone down, but because I believed science, the thing I'd devoted my life to, had to be built on truth. I drove home, my phone buzzing nonstop with unknown numbers. I didn't answer. I knew word of my reports was spreading, and Thornton was probably scrambling to save himself. But nothing could stop the truth now. It was like a stone rolling downhill, unstoppable. Back at my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and saw an email from Lucas Hayes. "Ethan, the lab's in chaos. Sarah looks like a ghost, and Thornton just called an emergency meeting with the board. I think they know you did something." I smiled faintly. Lucas was still a loyal ally, even if he didn't know the full scope of my plan. I pulled out the black notebook, flipping through it one last time. These pages weren't just evidence. They were proof of the 15 years I'd spent protecting integrity. I closed it, tucked it into a drawer, and looked out the window. Toledo was calm, but I knew a storm was coming for Novamed, and I, Ethan Carter, had set it in motion. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt at peace. Not because I'd beaten Thornton or Sarah, but because I'd kept my promise to myself. The truth would always win, no matter the cost. I stood, brewed another cup of coffee, and steeled myself for what was coming. Novamed would soon learn that calling me negligent was their biggest mistake. That night, as I sat in my small Toledo, Ohio apartment, the soft glow from my old desk lamp spilled across the kitchen table, where my laptop remained open. My phone kept buzzing with calls from unknown numbers, but I didn't answer. I knew the two emails I'd sent to Novamed's ethics board and OSHA had already started stirring up a storm. Dr. James Thornton and Dr. Sarah Blake were probably scrambling, but I didn't feel smug. Instead, a strange sense of peace settled over me. After 15 years of dedicating myself to protecting integrity, I'd done the right thing, not out of anger, but out of belief in the truth. The next morning, I woke early, brewed a cup of black coffee, and slipped into my familiar navy blazer. As I checked my email, an unexpected message popped up. It was from Dr. Margaret Ellis, Novamed's founder, who'd retired 5 years earlier. "Ethan," she wrote, "I've been contacted by the ethics board regarding your report. I always knew you were the moral compass of the lab. Would you be willing to meet and discuss this further? There's more that needs to come to light." Reading those words, I felt a rare warmth. Margaret Ellis was the one who taught me that science isn't just about data, it's about responsibility. I replied immediately, agreeing to meet her at her home in Toledo's historic district. That afternoon, I drove through tree-lined streets, where old brick houses stood quietly under fading sunlight. Ellis's home was a modest red brick building, its interior crammed with books and scientific journals, interspersed with family photos and academic awards. At 78, she still had a razor-sharp mind. She poured tea into delicate porcelain cups, then fixed me with a serious gaze. "They've suspended all research activities pending investigation," she said. "OSHA found exactly what you reported, critical violations in chemical storage and handling. The ethics board is conducting its own inquiry into the data falsification." I nodded, my hands warming around the teacup. "Sarah Blake's been placed on administrative leave," she continued. "She's cooperating with investigating." She paused, studying me closely. "But there's something else, isn't there? Something you didn't include in your reports." Her perceptiveness caught me off guard. I took a breath, then decided to share. "It wasn't just compliance violations," I said. 3 weeks ago, I found discrepancies in the preliminary trial data Sarah submitted to the NIH. The patient improvement rates were too uniform, statistically improbable. When I cross-checked the raw data, I saw alterations. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. The NIH didn't reject our grant because of administrative compliance issues. They spotted the same statistical anomalies I did, and Thornton knew it. I sent him a detailed analysis 2 days before the grant was officially declined. Dr. Ellis opened the folder, her expression growing grave as she reviewed the documents. "And Thornton chose to sacrifice you instead of Sarah," she said, her voice laced with disdain. "She was his star researcher, his direct link to Meditech." She snapped the folder shut, her eyes resolute. "Ethan, I'm assembling an independent review committee with some old colleagues from the university. With your documentation and testimony, we can ensure appropriate action is taken." Just then, my phone buzzed with a new email. "It's from the NIH's Office of Research Integrity," I said, scanning the message. "They're requesting a formal interview about the grant application and subsequent events at Novamed." Dr. Ellis nodded, her eyes sharp. "The dominoes are falling. Once one oversight body gets involved, others usually follow." She leaned forward.
Yeah.
"Ethan, I want you to know something. Standing up for scientific integrity, at great personal cost, is the very essence of what Novamed was founded on. I'm deeply sorry the institution I built failed you so profoundly." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I managed, steadying my voice. "That means a lot coming from you." Driving home, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an unfamiliar number. But I answered cautiously. "Mr. Carter, this is Robert Walsh from the University of Michigan's Medical Research Division," the voice said. "Dr. Ellis suggested I reach out. We're looking for someone with your expertise to oversee compliance and ethics training for our staff. Would you be interested in discussing the position?" I could hardly believe my ears. This wasn't just vindication, it was a chance to reclaim my place in the scientific community, somewhere my values would be respected. I agreed to meet Walsh the following week, feeling like a new door had just opened. Meanwhile, things at Novamed were unraveling. Local news reported that OSHA investigators had arrived at Novamed for an unannounced, comprehensive inspection. By noon, word got out they'd uncovered 27 violations, several classified as serious, resulting in fines exceeding $300,000. But the damage to Novamed's reputation was far worse. An inside source, likely Lucas, texted me that Sarah Blake had cracked under questioning, admitting to falsifying data at Thornton's direction. She provided emails and recorded conversations, corroborating my evidence, and extending the trail of deception to Meditech's executives. A few days later, I got an unexpected call from Charles Bennett, chairman of Novamed's board.
Mr. Carter,
He said, his voice grave, would you be willing to meet with the board? We're conducting an internal investigation, alongside the regulatory inquiry, and your insights would be invaluable. My first instinct was to refuse. They'd let me be publicly humiliated and fired without due process. But then I thought of Dr. Ellis's efforts to salvage the institution she'd built. I'll meet, I agreed, but only with my legal representative present. The meeting took place in the same boardroom where I'd been fired weeks earlier. Now the atmosphere was entirely different. The board members looked exhausted, worried, and Thornton's chair was conspicuously empty. Where's Dr. Thornton? I asked as the meeting began. Charles Bennett cleared his throat. Dr. Thornton has been terminated effective immediately. We've also severed key relationships with Meditech Solutions and are restructuring our leadership. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, despite the quiet satisfaction I felt. Mr. Carter,
Bennett continued.
We owe you a profound apology. The events leading to your dismissal were not only unjust, but potentially criminal. The board has authorized me to offer you full reinstatement with a substantial compensation package for damages to your reputation and career. My attorney and I exchanged glances. We'd anticipated this. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. But I've accepted another position. However, I'm willing to consult during your transition to help restore proper protocols and procedures. The relief on their faces was palpable. They needed someone who knew the systems, someone who could help rebuild the lab's shattered credibility. We negotiated terms, including a public apology and retraction of all allegations against me. As we left, my attorney smiled. That went better than expected. I nodded. They're desperate. The NIH has suspended all their current grants pending review. Without certification and compliance, they'll lose everything. The climax came weeks later. When I was called to testify before the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology in Washington, D.C., I sat before the lawmakers, recounting everything: the pressure to produce results after Meditech's acquisition, the dismantling of safety protocols, the data falsification, and the attempt to scapegoat me when the fraud was uncovered. Thornton and 3 Meditech executives sat at another table, their faces grim. They'd already faced federal charges for fraud related to grant applications, and now they faced public scrutiny for the culture of deception they'd fostered. As I stepped down from the witness stand, Dr. Ellis was waiting. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "You've done more than expose one lab's wrongs. You've sparked a national conversation about scientific ethics." Her words left me speechless. I'd never imagined my actions would reach this far. A year after I was fired from Novamed Research Institute, I stood at a podium in the largest lecture hall at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, facing a packed audience of students, faculty, and visiting researchers from across the country. The stage lights shone down, but I didn't feel nervous. Instead, I felt proud. The topic of my presentation was ethical guardianship, maintaining integrity in scientific research. As I began, my voice rang out clear and steady, carrying the weight of everything I'd been through. "The pressures you'll face in your careers are real," I said, looking directly at the audience. "Funding constraints, publication demands, corporate interests. But the moment you compromise scientific integrity, you stop being a scientist. You become something far less valuable to humanity." I shared my story, not to boast, but to warn. I spoke of my 15 years at Novamed, where I was the guardian of protocols, ensuring everything was done right. I recounted the day Dr. James Thornton called me negligent in front of my colleagues, firing me to cover up his and Dr. Sarah Blake's fraud. I described the black notebook where I documented every violation and how I used it to expose the truth, triggering investigations by OSHA, the ethics board, and ultimately a congressional hearing. The auditorium was silent, save for the sound of pens scratching and heads nodding in empathy. When I finished, the room erupted in a standing ovation. I hadn't expected it, but their eyes, filled with respect and admiration, were a reward greater than any award I'd ever received. My new role at the University of Michigan was Director of Research Integrity and Compliance Training. I developed training programs for researchers across multiple departments, ensuring scientific ethics remained paramount. During my interview with Dr. Robert Walsh in the hiring committee, I shared my philosophy. Science isn't just about results, it's about the process, and a dishonest process leads to irreparable consequences. Dr. Margaret Ellis's recommendation carries significant weight. Walsh said, as he walked me out, "But your handling of the Novamed situation proves you're the ethical leader we need." His words made me realize I hadn't just been vindicated. I'd found a place where my values were cherished. Meanwhile, Novamed continued to face the fallout of their mistakes. Local news in Toledo reported that the lab had downsized dramatically, operating with only a third of its former staff. Metitech Solutions, the parent company, paid hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and settlements. Thornton and two Metitech executives received federal prison sentences for fraud related to grant applications. Sarah Blake avoided jail by fully cooperating with investigators, but her scientific career was over. She left Toledo soon after, and no one heard from her again. One afternoon, as I prepared for a training session, a familiar face appeared at my office door. It was Lucas Hayes, the lab tech I'd trained at Novamed. He flashed a wide grin, no longer the anxious kid I'd met at Bob's diner. "Professor Carter," he greeted, his voice brimming with excitement. I chuckled, correcting him. "Just Professor Lucas. How's Novamed doing?" Lucas sat down, explaining that the lab had changed completely. The new leadership had implemented the protocols I'd designed as a consultant, and though smaller, the work there now felt honest again. "They still talk about you," Lucas said, his eyes shining. "They say you're the one who saved Novamed from total collapse." Lucas hesitated, then continued. "I've been offered a research position here at the university. I was hoping you'd be my advisor." I smiled, remembering the young man who stood by me when others turned away. "Lucas, I'd be honored," I replied. That moment felt like a circle closing. Lucas wasn't just a former colleague. He was proof that what I'd done at Novamed and beyond had made a difference. One evening, as I reviewed emails, a notification popped up from a prestigious scientific journal. My article on research ethics reform had been accepted for publication. It wasn't just a personal achievement. It was a sign the system was changing, however slowly. My story had become a cautionary tale, used in workshops and classrooms nationwide. I never imagined that one decision, sending 2 emails on a November morning, would lead to such far-reaching change. But it had. Sitting at my kitchen table in my Ann Arbor apartment, I looked out the window, where streetlights glimmered on quiet streets. A year ago, I was a fired, humiliated, betrayed man. Now I was a professor, a speaker, a guide for the next generation of scientists. I didn't win by destroying Thornton or Sarah. I won by holding fast to my belief in the truth, by rebuilding what was broken on a stronger foundation. Novamed may have failed me, but I didn't fail myself. I thought of Dr. Margaret Ellis, of Lucas, of the students in that lecture hall. They were why I kept going. And I thought of the people watching this story, those who might be facing injustice, being blamed, or feeling abandoned. To them I want to say, the truth is your greatest weapon. Be patient, be meticulous, and never give up. Justice may come slowly, but it will come if you keep fighting. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for following my story. Your support drives us to keep sharing tales of justice and truth. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Together we can spread the message that the truth is always worth defending. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.